We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Alex Kirshner, Stephen Godfrey, where do you guys plan to be on December 30th, 2031? I'm assuming there will be a Godfrey in, high school by that point in time?
Underground bunker.
Multiple Godfreys in high school? Godfrey children in high school at that point in time?
You know what? You are asking questions along the lines as if I'm building a militia, and that is my business, and not yours, and not the government's.
Alex, will we still be living in the godforsaken North at that point in time?
Well, maybe, but I think that on December 30th, 2031, I hope to be wrapping up my 10-year, $94.95 million contract to coach the SEC's first Texas football team.
Texas A&M just extended Jimbo Fisher to the tune of 10 years, $94.95 million through December 31st, 2031 in the year of our Lord. I am led to believe, I'm guessing here, that may be fully guaranteed. I am not sure. I have not seen that reported. I knew that his previous deal was fully, by God, guaranteed for 75.
And look, it's been justified. They've won several games since,
they've won several football games
since that contract was struck up. So I
They've
don't
won
know what your beef is.
They've won a New Year's Six bowl game.
Congrats, though. That was my first two exasperated sighs of the actual college football season.
And
We made it, boys!
I think Texas A&M's going to be pretty good this year. I think I've said that on this show. But, just do it in February,
look,
not before the season.
We can't actually make fun of this because this is the exact same circumstance in which the first stupid contract was built. So they just did the same exact thing twice. Although, some of us have never stopped making fun of the first stupid contract. And we can keep going.
I don't think they regret the first stupid contract. No. I think that in college football, stupid is not necessarily a pejorative. And I think
no.
I think that's important.
We have a sport where we gave one faction of Texans tens of millions of dollars a year, more than they were already making, because ostensibly they hated another faction of Texans. That was almost 10 years ago. And now we're bringing the hated Texans back into the same cul-de-sac with the other Texans that they hate, and we're giving both of them dozens more money on top of that number just for the hell of it.
I actually understand the business, not just from the perspective that the SEC is rich and getting richer, but because Jimbo Fisher might have left. Do you know why he might have left if they didn't give him an extension? Anyone know? Anyone remember from his first contract?
Why?
Because if Jimbo Fisher left Texas A&M under the first contract, and I don't know if this has changed, I haven't seen the new contract yet, I don't think it's been released publicly, he had no buyout responsibility to Texas A&M.
This is true.
And the contract said something to the effect of, and this is a paraphrase, but it captures the spirit of the thing. Coach understands that Texas A&M has invested a lot in him, and will be very disappointed if he leaves. So Jimbo understands that.
I wonder how many pissed off people in Baton Rouge just got a little bit more respectful of Ed Orgeron in the last 35 minutes.
Oh, boy. Fellas, week one. By God, we've made it. Holy shit, did I need to make it. It is week one. We're kicking real games off. We're recording this Wednesday, September 1st. UAB and Jacksonville State play in a couple hours. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I'm going to watch it. I am going to dinner with my girlfriend, whose birthday is tomorrow, so that I can watch the rest of the weekend with impunity. We will get to all the fun things that we're vested interest, tasting menu, all that good stuff. But let's start with, I don't know, anxiety bowls. People are going to say, well, how can I have an anxiety bowl? It's week one. We haven't. Besides Nebraska, nobody's got anxiety. Well, folks, you came the wrong
But it's 2021. Everybody's got anxiety all the time, and we can do whatever we want.
Right. Yeah, you came to the wrong show for that. As Alex has so eloquently put in the show notes, college football makes us anxious. It does this in the best of times. It legitimately makes people feel despair, even in the course of wins. Guys, I swear this is supposed to be fun. Week 1 is perhaps the most ripe week for reactions and overreactions. You'll hear me say this probably a dozen times on the show, but coaches do not know what they have in store in week 1. Teams do the most growth and development between week 1 and week 2, or week 0 and week 1, between their first game and their second game, because there is no preseason and there are no joint practices in this sport, unlike the NFL. Alex?
Well, Richard, people can't see this because podcasting, while it is a visual medium, does not have a picture attached to it, but you are podcasting today in your number 7 Texas A&M jersey that I believe you got in 2014. Was it 2015? Yeah. Kenny Hill?
Yeah.
Kenny Trill?
Yeah, big Kenny Trill guy.
Yeah,
that
huge,
feels like
huge Kenny Trill guy.
That feels like 20 years ago. Sorry.
You're going to lead us to the promise.
It more or less was. Yes, there's a lot of angst in this sport, and I think week 1 is certainly...
We don't have any football, so this is the best thing to talk, the next best thing to talk about.
And, you know, it's been a long year and a half in the world, and it was a long football season last year, and I'm not sure everyone quite knows how to act getting back to a football season that will not necessarily be normal. COVID's still here, but it will be certainly more normal. I think it will be less overtly, why are we doing this, than last year's was, to be sure. And look, we're all kind of an emotional tinderbox right now for lots of reasons. So especially if you root for one of the teams playing in one of these games that is going to be an angst fest, an anxiety bowl, whatever you would have it, there will be legitimate human despair felt by people on, we think, at least one side of these games. But I think what makes it a true anxiety bowl, Stephen, is that in some of these games, you're pretty much guaranteed that whoever loses is going to feel terrible, or at least there will be certain people who think that those teams are in huge trouble
and
if they lose the game.
That's the thing. It's the perception, I think, that makes these games interesting. These are not, this guy's on the hot seat if they lose or what. Well, a couple of these are. But the most thing, I want to bust a perception that there is real anxiety around some of these, because there are not. Now, we will get to it, Godfrey.
When y'all first proposed doing anxiety bowl treatments in in week 1, I took a little pause, but the spirit of the thing, I think, is accurate right now. And it's not a 2020 to 2021 like unique situation necessarily. I just think, and Richard, you and I just did this on our Coach Gossip show on Patreon, splitzoneduo.com. You can join our Patreon. The season is year-round. That's not hyperbolic to say anymore. We've had weird coaching changes pretty much in every month that you could think of. Week 0 was just, it's kind of hard not to talk about coaching changes right off the this is our main show on week 1 of a brand new season. We are starting with talking about guys getting fired. I think we kind of have to, based on what happened last week. I don't feel like we're jumping the shark.
We didn't do a hurry up, but Illinois 30, Nebraska 22. Holy hell, they really bricked that one, didn't they? I picked Nebraska in that game. I thought Nebraska was going to be fine.
Same.
I thought they were going to dispose with Illinois quite handedly in Brett Bielema's first game at the helm. Obviously, they did not do that, even though Illinois' starting quarterback went down for Art Sikowski, who is in his 9th year as an FBS quarterback, coming over from Rutgers. I am of the persuasion, despite the new adjustment for Illinois that I think we may have to all do in our hearts if this thing is real. I'm of the persuasion that Nebraska beat themselves more than Illinois beat them. Penalties, the punt, losing track of the downs in the red zone, Adrian Martinez not taking a step forward as a passer, all these kind of things. The way that they lost that game are what, more than anything else, in my opinion, have created a retroactive anxiety bowl situation moving forward this season.
Yeah, I think they're going to be okay against Fordham.
I think they're going to be okay against Fordham, but my general view of how angsty the situation is at Nebraska is sort of colored by how I viewed their response to the public unveiling of their NCAA issues 2 or 3 weeks ago, which the three of us have, in text messages to each other, kind of disagreed about. But I thought that the way they treated that publicly could have been circle the wagons around Scott Frost the way that you sometimes see schools. I mean, the way that, like, hell, Ole Miss did initially around Hugh Freeze. And they didn't really do that. To me, it looked a bit more Jeremy Pruitt-like in the way they responded compared to how they could have. And it made me think that maybe Nebraska is, like, hedging its bets a little bit and kind of eager to have a little bit of potential buyout leverage against Scott Frost, as in they don't love this guy anymore. And if you get caught up on some ticky-tack level 2 NCAA stuff, maybe you can get rid of him. You said, Godfrey, that when they said, we're fully cooperating, we were made aware of this, which was basically what Trev Alberts, the athletic director, said.
Yeah.
That's just the truth. That's just normal announcement.
They created a flexible statement. And so had everything gone the way all three of us thought, because I bet on Nebraska as well, that statement would have been flexible enough to look like a appropriate public acknowledgement of a wrongdoing without throwing anyone under the bus. It's also flexible enough to acknowledge that something happened, and hey, who's ultimately responsible for that? Oh, it's our head coach. So I do think it was designed to be flexible and diplomatic and bend whichever way they needed it to. Just to go back for a second, one of the most shocking quotes I've seen in I don't even know how long, and I can't say shocking, I can't complain about this, and I shouldn't even make a big deal out of it, because this is what we ask for in the media over and over again.
I know exactly what you're going to say, and I am ready to disagree with it.
You're ready to disagree that it should be public or not?
Go ahead and say it.
Scott Frost. So this is from the original tweet that I saw is from a guy named Steve Merrick who covers Nebraska. Quote, about half of our game plan was out the window when they lined up how they did. End quote.
I knew it.
So,
I don't think it's as ridiculous as people are making it out to be, but I understand that maybe it's some quiet part out loud. Maybe you shouldn't say it. It was an embarrassing loss. You're under fire, yada, yada, yada. Guys, they came in with a team whose head coach has not coached college football in 4 odd years in week 1 of a new season.
Okay.
Again, you come into week 0, whatever the hell. Your first game, you do not know what you have. With 18 to 22-year-olds, you never do. You never know what they're going to produce. You doubly don't know what a new coaching staff is going to produce because you have 0 film. Yes, you have some Illinois film last year. They played plenty of man, and Ryan Walters coached plenty of man at Missouri. You can understand what they're probably going to do in pass defense.
Right.
Personnel is changing, yada, yada, yada. What he's talking about is a lot of the times what happens on the headsets on the sidelines after like a drive or two.
Still not excusable.
Because what happens is a lot of times you come into a game with the game plan and, sometimes like a team will score like on the first drive in like 6 plays and you're like, holy shit. And then the next drive they come out and they score again and you're like, holy shit. Then they don't score the rest of the game because they're off the script. Mm-hmm. And both teams have adjusted one way or the other.
Right.
The offense has adjusted to its real game plan for the game, and the defense has adjusted to some of the things that they've just seen or what have you. So you have a situation where you really do have to sometimes throw the baby out with the bathwater. With all that being said, probably don't say it.
Okay, I'm happy you said it because it's the truth. And I'm not disagreeing with anything that you just said. We see this happen all the time because you just gave the technical definition to what we call, a swing in momentum, or wow, this thing has really changed. What blows me away is this is Nebraska. They are insane. We have for an entire offseason said this single program may be the furthest away from perception and reality in terms of self-examination. I call it a cult. Scott Frost, born of that cult, considered to be the prodigal son, comes out and admits something that's inarguably true. But by saying essentially you were out-schemed or unable to run your system, to lean into your strengths based on recruiting and development and talent and being Nebraska and not being Illinois with a first year with a brand new head coaching staff, that sits in the craw of Nebraska as a cult and honestly the perception of everyone around them in college football. That he said it to me is a little bit of an admission that, hey, he knows this thing is ending.
It sounds small-timey in the same way that Nebraska fans didn't like it when they attempted to get this Oklahoma game that is coming up in a couple of weeks moved off their schedule.
Yes.
It's just not, it doesn't fit with the image that fan base has for itself, and I think that it understandably has for itself, and so it doesn't work. And I guess where I land on it before we move on to week 1 rather than week 0 angsty games is that before this year, you could look at Scott Frost before, like let's say a month ago, and see a $20 million-ish buyout that's been reported, and see the golden boy image, even in spite of 3 bad years to start, and think, well, it's going to take a lot for him to get shit-canned this year. I think it seems increasingly plausible.
Yes. It gets harder and harder to tell yourself that everyone else is wrong and you actually do have superpowers when now these dissenting voices and these statements of fact are coming from within your own program.
Yeah, very much so. Not a good place to be. 2 programs that are where Nebraska would like to be, generally speaking, Georgia and Clemson. They are playing this week. This is the Anxiety Bowl segment, but it's only here because I've started to see just kind of a dribble of discussion about this game that indicates that it is something approximating a quote-unquote must-win for at least Georgia. And some might say it is for Clemson because of Clemson's comparatively weak conference in the ACC and the fact that both of these schools are sort of playoff or bust. Those are our expectations at this point, types of programs. Richard, I know, again, this is the angsty game segment, but I don't actually think that anyone should feel anxious about Georgia-Clemson. Do you think that this game will make the loser feel utterly despairing for the state of their program, and do you think that it should?
Richard, what if the offense for Georgia is shitty? I would just like to throw that in there.
He had to say that. Well, if the offense for Georgia is shitty, what I will do is come on and make the excuse that they don't have any wide receivers. Everybody's injured.
Right.
Their hybrid tight end, Eric Gilbert, who is more of a pass catcher a la Kyle Pitts than he is a blocker a la insert big blocking tight end. He is not currently with the team for personal reasons. They've got a lot going on. They should acquit themselves well because they're Georgia, because they're the most talented team in the country. I am picking Georgia against the spread, the 3.5-point underdogs, I think. I'm taking Georgia against the spread at pretty much every number if you give me points with that team. I have said from the mountaintop dozens of times on this show that the offense is where it needs to be. It was last season, right when JT Daniels took over. Clemson is... Both of these teams can lose this game, rip off 12 more, and be right where they're supposed to be the first weekend of January. But you and I know Georgia fans because you are a fan of the Georgia professional football team. And you understand that everybody is going to freak the fuck out if they lose this game because it is same old Georgia. I don't think Clemson people really care either. Not they don't care. I think Clemson people are going to be fine. They've won national championships with 1 loss already.
Several.
1 dumb loss than to a team that is as talented, if not even more, which is wild to say given what Clemson is. But my Georgia friends, I know it's been a long 40 years. Oh, boy, do I know. It's been a long 40 years since you've won a national championship, 4 decades, if you're playing along at home. It's probably still going to be okay.
That scene in the original Friday Night Lights where Billy Bob turns and he's like, ain't no such thing as curses. And he's like trying to be reassuring even though you could tell he doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
If that movie took place in Georgia, the entire truck stop would have turned around and go, bull fucking shit, there's not.
Sometimes I try not to be superstitious, and then Georgia loses like every wide receiver.
Dude, if it's a Georgia sports team, I will invoke all of the dark arts of mysticism. In reality, I would like to point one thing out. We have yet to have one of these neutral site kickoff games be as impactful as we think in August. As the season stretches on, it just never seems to shake out that way for whatever reason. Now, this on paper seems like the likeliest candidate to break that streak because of the value of these two teams together and because, as you said, Richard, Georgia's still primed to contend for the SEC. Clemson, obviously, unless we're talking about injuries coming out of this game, Clemson is still your prohibitive conference favorite. I just have a hard time thinking this is going to be this round 1 of a repeat matchup thing come January that everyone keeps talking about.
I think that if Clemson loses, there will just be a certain camp that says something to the effect of, well, even if they run the table against that weak schedule in the ACC, Clemson's going to miss the playoff this year, even though there is scant evidence that that would happen. I think there has been one team that has been a one-loss Power 5 champ and not made the playoff ever, and that was the Ohio State team that Rondale Moore lit up. Unless it was the one that Iowa lit up. They do bleed together. I think it was the Purdue year.
I think it was the Purdue year.
I can't ever tell when he's throwing shade.
I know.
No, not in that
No,
case.
I think he was. That was honest. That was honest.
That was earnest. I think it was 2018. But the point is, one-loss Power 5 champs make the playoff almost all the time. And if you run through what Clemson has on the slate, I'm not going to bother you with the trouble of going down the remaining 11 games on their schedule. I like you too much. Let me just assure you, I'm looking at it right now. There's not a whole lot there. They're probably going to be just fine. They're probably going to wind up where they should be. And for Georgia's part, I think that the narrative if they lose is that they're out of margin for error because historically no two-loss team has made the playoff. To say that no two-loss team has made the playoff is one of those statements that is true but misleading if you present it to your audience by itself.
That does not mean I am not going to say it come October time, baby.
It's true, but it's not honest, Richard, because in 2018, I believe it was, the Auburn Tigers were going to make the playoff with 2 losses if they beat Georgia in the SEC Championship. Remember, they had beaten Georgia, then they had beaten Alabama. They were right on the doorstep, and if they'd beaten Georgia, they were going to make the field. They didn't. Georgia made it instead and then went on to, an adventurous playoff run of its own that year. I just think that both of these teams are going to be fine, and everyone should enjoy the game because the winner is in a wonderful state, and the loser is still fine. The opposite of that would be Texas Tech and Houston. They are playing a game this weekend, Stephen. This one is a tried and true anxiety bowl, is it not? Is there any way that the team that loses this game will not fall into an utter state of sadness and disrepair?
Godfrey, I'm more interested on the Houston end of this because Houston is not a team that we talked about on our Patreon coaching hot seat, whatever you want to call it, special gossip special.
I'm so proud of y'all for getting your plugs in.
But I mean, he brings up a good point here.
Yeah. Do you guys remember last season was really weird? But do you remember the point where Dana was just like talking about like all the quiet parts loud in a press conference after a loss? I can't remember which game it was, but he was basically like, "What are they gonna do? Fire me?" Dana has a thick with 2 C's contract for an AAC school because, in essence, he deserved to get that relative to Houston and coming from the Big 12, yada yada yada. I can hijack the rest of the show and make Alex twitch and give you the Houston Cougars under Dana Holgorsen reason. Like, I can give you a chronological exploration as to why reasonably they have not just become the pinnacle G5 program. And a lot of it makes good sense. Major Applewhite was not a good recruiter. Secret, guys, you ready for this? The guy who just got fired from Texas, Tom Herman, was actually not that good a recruiter at Houston when you go back and look. You can get 1 5-star defensive lineman and still not be a good recruiter on the whole. That combined with several other things, De'Aaron King transferring, some of this is like headline stuff. None of that matters because outsized, dumb expectations, they exist whether they're dumb or not. We just got done talking about Nebraska, my friends. The expectation at Houston is that you dominate the G5. I'm not saying it has to happen this year, and I'm not saying they have to win this game, but it better happen real soon.
Also, his first year at Houston in 2019, I don't know that it got enough attention for what a disaster it was at the time.
That was we're going to redshirt everybody.
But it was kind of a disaster. Like, Derek King apparently wants to leave. Dana spins it as like, all right, we're holding this guy out because it's his last year. And we want to be able to come back.
They announced the red shirt before the transfer, but I can tell you from talking to people in the department, there was some frustration from King and his dad and some people around him. They did think that selling King on this crazy red shirt idea was going to work,
right? And it did not.
Yes,
because it's his second year at Miami now, so it didn't work.
So,
and it's like I guess I understand trying because he's that good of a player, but like no coach in college football history, I don't believe, because that was the first year of that 4-game redshirt limit, had ever tried a gambit like that, and it just didn't work. Like, it could not have missed more.
I didn't ask Dana this, and maybe I will. I don't know if I'll get an honest response on the record. It kind of that first year, Alex strikes me like he took that job and took a really fat contract, got to go back to Houston, all the things he wanted in his personal life. Tillman Fertitta gave him carte blanche, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't have to. He really did not want to be in West Virginia. I don't know if he looked at U of H's roster and saw that there were bigger problems than he realized.
Tillman, who you have reported on before, has or had, I don't really know. I think his holdings are very much tied up in equity positions, and I don't know how they're all doing. Rich guy, had a lot of money.
Not a good time to be a billionaire in the hospitality industry.
Right, but that's my understanding, is that he is in the hospitality industry. And
why? Because you may just be a multi-hundred millionaire?
No, because you may have leveraged almost everything that's liquid to buy the Houston Rockets. And your boy's not an NBA reporter, but I can read a win-loss column.
And see when your best and most marketable players decide they no longer want to be in your organization. But
all at
I
once,
guess,
too, I think. I mean, now we are an NBA podcast.
I think Holgerson's contract there is like 4 years, 20 mil or something like that, or 5 years, 20 mil. Probably 5 years, 20 mil.
Yeah, he's on a $5 million average for a G5 job.
Something like that, 4 or 5 years. I am hard-pressed to believe that Tillman, who is kind of the bankroller for a lot of what Houston does, is so broke that he can't afford to fire this guy he hired.
He likes Dana.
Oh, so then he's not in any trouble at all. Then he's just going to...
No, I didn't say that.
Right, right. Look, that is not what he said.
Look, here's what I love the most about U of H, and I do develop these like crushes on programs I cover because they do develop like personalities. I'm talking about the program, not an individual, not a coach, not an AD, not a booster. U of H represents the city of Houston maybe better than any single program represents a city that it sits in. Because like Georgia Tech
depends on if Miami's good, but be that as it may.
Well, it's a little bit like that Miami that we were all raised on, and I was kind of raised seeing it a little bit because I'm the old fucker of the show. Houston is transparent. Houston is in a red state with red businesses that sort of operates blue and purple because if you can make money, if you are committed to the religion of capitalism and you are successful, Houston does not care what your ethnicity is. Houston does not care what your zoning ordinance is. They don't care what you want to build. They don't care how insane it is. There's a beauty about manifest destiny in Houston, and I'm not saying it's like idealized. There aren't victims of this process.
Yeah, I was going to say to an extent with the ethnicity thing, but I get what you mean.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is it's got one of the most successful, like economically Asian populations in the country. There's a larger melting pot of Muslims than anywhere else in the South. Again, it's not a utopia.
There is a middle class of sorts for people of color, which is more than a lot of cities can.
I would say that in my 40 years of being extremely white, the only other place I've seen a thriving black professional class and a substantive black middle class in the South outside of Atlanta, Georgia, is in Houston, Texas, and to some degree Dallas, although I'm not as familiar with DFW. All that being said, Houston will love you until you're not successful. The terms of being successful at U of H, guys, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think Houston going to the Final Four in basketball, it doesn't alleviate anything on Dana. I think it's that feeling inside the city of like, this is the standard we should operate at. Like, you better be UCF in 2 years. I didn't say beat. I said be UCF in like no more than 2 more years. All that being said, just to plug Patreon one more time, Richard and I are pretty down on Texas Tech.
Yes,
yeah.
They're not good.
We're not going to spend a ton of time on Texas Tech, but yes, we are.
We just went into like the sociology of the city of Houston, but by the way, I'm shit at Lubbock's real fucked up. So
yeah, it's that ain't going well. Penn State and Wisconsin. I don't know why this is on the list. Godfrey, regale me.
All right, y'all put this one on me, didn't you? I have come. Yeah. Alex, help me here. Tell me, show me where you want me to go on this.
Well, you had indicated a couple months back, I remember you doing this, that someone who was going to lose this game was going to feel some type of way about it. It is pretty understandable from the Penn State perspective because they are hoping that 2020 was 2020.
Yes.
And that was it. And this would be a good way to demonstrate that.
Yes.
I'm a little confused about why we assume Wisconsin will feel
I am too.
particularly down. But you would indicate. I feel like you'd indicated this to me.
I'm all in on this concept as it relates to both James Franklin and Penn State football and them as a marriage. Scotty is just so fucking resilient that I feel like if they were to lose this game really in any situation outside of a blowout, which I definitely don't see happening, that they'll be fine. They're Scotty, and they will easily. They're a program that goes, oh, you know what? We've got a season-opening loss in conference play. That's fine. No one's going to notice us until November. We'll go beat everyone in the division, which they might do this year. Wisconsin and Iowa are extremely Wisconsin and Iowa this year. However, I do think at a certain point with the retirement of Barry Alvarez, Wisconsin's going to have to make a decision soon. Is this it? Is this what we're going to do? Is this who we're going to be? Are we going to be the very best of the second tier? Arguably, gentlemen, are they not one of the very best of the second tier? As Bud would always say, why am I ever talking about Wisconsin? They are never going to contend for a national title. That's what Bud Elliott used to say on this show if we talked about Scotty.
They're one of the most consistent.
Okay. On the other end, the story writes itself, gentlemen, completely. It's pretty obvious here that, there is a desperation, and I feel like maybe not from necessarily a gambling perspective to talk about this. I think you will see some excessive force if the opportunity presents itself from the Penn State offense specifically. No team in college football wants to say that 2020 was an aberration more than this coach and this program. This is a shitty draw for an opening week opponent. They're going to try like hell to make you forget every single thing that happened from Indiana on.
Yeah, things went pretty bad from Indiana on with them.
If they lose this game, Alex,
yeah,
then what do you say in that press conference? How do you justify the narrative of, hey, guys, we fired Kirk Soroka. It was all his fault, Alex.
I know what James Franklin will say if they lose, which is the same thing he'll say if they win, because he is committed to this bit more than anybody. And to say that he's more committed to a trite press conference fib than any other coach is tall praise. But he will say, 1-0 next week. 1-0 next week.
RJ, do you hear the Yinzer coming out in there?
Yeah.
Do you hear that Yinzer?
But that is what he'll do. I don't think that James Franklin has ever said in his life an introspective thing about Penn State as it relates to wins and losses. Not saying he doesn't have depth as a person talking about other things, but in terms of if Penn State is good or if Penn State is bad, he will quickly disregard it in his public statements.
Richard, the last it's been a long time. But Richard, the last time I was in the football offices at Penn State, I was sitting there. Moorhead was the OC, and I was sitting doing the interview. We were going over notes and just talking and stuff. And then a student assistant walks in, and someone from Pittsburgh had found the fax number for the football offices and just wrote, "Eat shit, motherfuckers, go Pitt." That fax, Alex Kirshner.
Yeah, that was definitely
that's what I heard.
I sent that for sure. Yeah. I'm glad that's been established.
Before we get to the final one, there is one on here that I wanted to spring out of thin air that I kind of just think it may be funny.
Okay.
They're not going to lose this game. I know they're not going to lose this game. But
do it. Oh, God, do it. I hope you do it.
Are we going
what
to
if
Knoxville?
Akron scares Auburn?
Oh.
I thought we were going to Knoxville.
So we both thought this was Knoxville, right?
Yep, I thought.
That is probably the more unlikely of these very unlikely scenarios.
Richard respects my show run. He knows we're talking about them later for a second.
Okay.
So
I thought you were about to tell me he respects Scott Loeffler, at which point the headset's coming off, and I'm just officially leaving this operation.
Of very minor, very, very minor chances of upsets happening, and I mean infinitesimal.
Bro, what are you
Tennessee
doing?
is not losing to Bowling Green.
Buddy.
But what if?
Okay.
Bo Nix comes out and throws 3 picks, and they play with their food for 2.5 quarters?
At what point does Bain show up and blow the field up?
I'm just saying.
Auburn.
I think
Birmingham is Pittsburgh's sister city, and that was
they are.
Because
they're both steel cities.
That was filmed at Heinz
that was at
Field
Heinz,
when Bain comes up. So I mean, that would make some sense.
Akron is not beating Auburn, but what if you leave that stadium Saturday afternoon with a bad taste in your mouth?
This is why
they
I'm
didn't take care of
because
business.
in the preseason shows, when I want to go on and on in detail about the MAC and I get laughed at, there are moments like this where if you study. You know how everyone's getting the super senior boost this year, and we all agree the G5 is going to have a higher quality of football because you're going to have more experienced players, especially on the lines. That ain't Akron, bro. There's like 10 teams in the country that shit don't apply to. Akron is one of them shits, okay?
They're like a 37-point underdog or something.
For all of the off-field nonsense, completely preventable, by the way, it's called science, motherfuckers, that Auburn could have, that is dealing with, they are going to run this shit like a high school scrimmage. They're going to try and rush for 300 yards. They're going to do a couple fun show-shiny things. They're going to make people try and believe Pat Dye is on the sidelines. Like, this is, they are going to do everything they can. This game is going to be an ambassadorship to some serious decision makers on the plains.
I just like to have fun sometimes.
One way to endanger public health would be to lose to Akron. That would lead to some sort of civil unrest, I would think. And
that would.
We could have more problems than just whatever.
What's more scientific? Hey, what's more scientifically improbable, that a microchip is implanted in a vaccine, or that you motherfuckers can't beat Akron?
Please, God, take us to the next game, Alex Kershaw.
Yeah, I guess because I don't know. I haven't talked to a lawyer, so I'm not going to answer that question here. UCLA is hosting at the Rose Bowl the LSU Tigers. I've been to the Rose Bowl, by which I mean I've been to the gates outside it and couldn't get in a couple weeks ago. I tried. The security guards were not being cool, but I could tell that it was going to be a beautiful setting when LSU was here for this game.
The Rose Bowl isn't one of those that's like all the way in the ground, right?
It's
not like
largely
Michigan in the
it is
ground.
largely in the ground,
Some of
but
it
not all the way.
Can we back up for a second? Because this wasn't in the show notes. Did you try and break in the Rose Bowl during a pandemic?
I wouldn't say that I tried to break in. I tried to look for an open door.
You tried to access the Rose Bowl during off hours during the pandemic.
Yes, I did.
I think I've seen people shot for less.
Couple weeks ago,
Especially in LA.
This is a policy that I have, which is that if I am near a college football stadium that I haven't been to, or any stadium that I haven't been to,
You
I will
attempt
see
to
if
break
there's-
and enter.
No, I do not attempt to break and enter. I attempt to walk in through an open door and then leave without touching anything. I have done this at Redacted, and at Redacted.
In your defense, I don't want this to be a bit on you. When I worked in professional wrestling, we did a TV taping in Nampa, Idaho. On the way to the airport, I pulled up at Boise's campus, this is years ago, with a cup of coffee in my hand, walked to the 50-yard line, drank my coffee, looked around, and got back in my car. Idaho's built a little different.
That's incredible.
Well, I had a great trip to the Rose Bowl anyway because my girlfriend had never been to LA before, and we stopped at In-N-Out on the side of a freeway. And I think that everyone we talked to said that was like, the most quintessential Angelino experience you could possibly have. To just have In-N-Out on the side of a freeway. So did that. Anyway, back to the point. Here I am derailing my own show run. UCLA and LSU are playing, and it's pretty easy to see how an LSU loss, which, by the way, SP plus favors by like a point, pretty easy to see how that would not.
I think LSU is going to run them. Dog.
Yeah, I think they're going to
Well,
exercise
all right.
demons.
So let's take that. Let's follow that thread. If
We're doing
LSU
vested
wins,
interest a little bit later, but I think they're going to beat them.
yeah,
if
they're going
LSU wins this game, is that any like existential problem for UCLA? Because on the one hand, they did do what they were supposed to do last week. It was Hawaii and it was week 0, but they did what they were supposed to do.
It depends on how it looks. I think it very, very clearly depends on how it looks. DTR did not impress me on Saturday against Hawaii. I understand it's just Hawaii, but he's still sailing out routes. I mean, it's still inaccurate. I think there are still problems there. With his lack of, he has not taken the step forward that I think he needed to do. Now, I get it. It's just week 1. Maybe he'll come out tomorrow or on Saturday and look a lot better. But if you're inaccurate against two of the best corners in college football, you're going to have a bad time. If you come out against a defensive line that is not of Hawaii's ilk and is much better, and think you're going to consistently run it down that team's throat, particularly when that defensive line features quite a bit of large people from Louisiana and Mississippi, and you're not from Louisiana and Mississippi, you're from as far away from Louisiana/Mississippi as you can possibly
to know
get.
what to do with a crawfish.
Unclear if you're going to have a good time there either. I say that to say I get if UCLA didn't show much because they didn't have to against a Hawaii team that they were way better than. But
Alex, what's the dude's name that I mispronounced?
Who are we talking about?
Which one?
Pac-12 commissioner.
Oh, George
Kliavkoff.
Kliavkoff.
No, you just say it so I can say
George
it.
George Kliavkoff.
Kliavkoff is the person I would like to insert into this anxiety dynamic. I do not believe that there is a situation in which UCLA places Chip onto some sort of hypothetical hot seat based solely on the results of
Unless
this
they
game.
lose by like 50.
Yes, and Richard and I did discuss this on the Patron episode in more detail. I would like to say this. I would like to shift the view a little bit. It is incumbent upon Mr. Kliavkoff to start building a little bit more equity back in the new era of the Pac-12. I don't think UCLA has a chance to win this game. I know that Oregon is going to Ohio State. Is it next week?
I'm not sure
week
how
two,
we can
week
reach
two.
the conclusion that UCLA doesn't have a chance to win the game.
I watched
not
the
a
game.
chance. No,
I
but it's like
watched
not a chance.
I'm all in
like,
with Richard on this. I think
not a
this
chance?
may look, dude.
not,
y'all,
not-
look,
you're not entertaining it.
nobody hates SEC reinforcement. I'll interrupt you, Richard, for your own contractual reasons. No one hates to reinforce this SEC bullshit more than I do. But this is going to be a painful example of like just a different style of football.
I do fear there's going to be a rude awakening.
They're going to whoop that ass mainly to exercise some
on
demons.
Saturday
Okay.
evening.
Will you entertain me, indulge me for a second, and let's pretend that you're both wrong and I'm right.
Okay,
And
okay,
I'm not like picking UCLA. I'm just saying I think there's better than a 30% chance that they win the game, which I don't think either of you do. If it did happen, what level of DEFCON are we at? Like, are we at
1.
okay?
It's
So bad. Like someone
LSU?
specifically. Yeah, the head Tiger is getting fired if they lose.
Richard and I have to do another coaching show next week.
Okay. All right. Well, good to know. Good
Like
to know.
it's not gonna happen next week. It's not gonna happen next week. But so much blood in the water can be smelled from hundreds of miles away. Does that work?
Works for me.
You can't. They're not Yankees, but for purposes of the exercise, I'm going to call them Yankees. You can't lose to a bunch of Yankees.
Okay. I'm not sure that would be more embarrassing than what they did to a bunch of Mississippians last year against a bunch of Mississippians in week 1 of, or whatever we called that. But let's see. Let's see if the Bo Pelini-less LSU is better prepared in its first game than the Bo Pelini full LSU was. Richard, we have several bits of podcast business this week. Let's make a thing of this. You assured me that you could run through multiple bits of podcast business that are all somehow related to the state of North Carolina in like a beautifully scripted fashion, as seamlessly as anyone's ever done an ad read before.
In a single take, right?
And you could do it in one take without having to re-record it. That is what you're insisting.
Watch me work. They call me One Take Johnson for a reason.
I will count you down. You ready?
I am.
3, 2, commerce.
Y'all know what it is. Home Field Apparel, your home for premium, comfortable collegiate apparel. Big news Saturday, Season 2 is winding down with a bang as Home Field is debuting UNC apparel for this week's drop. For my money, it's the best apparel brand that has ever partnered with the Tar Heels. Has a certain little shoe brand ever given you 20% off? I think not. We'll give you 20% off of your first order with promo code SZD at homefieldapparel.com. That's promo code SZD at homefieldapparel.com. Now, a couple hours down the road from Chapel Hill is the Queen City of Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's there where straight bangers of opening games will commence. It's the Dukes Mayo Classic doubleheader. Thursday night, App State versus ECU on ESPNU. Saturday night, Georgia versus Clemson on ABC. Learn more at dukesmayoclassic.com and follow the Dukes Mayo Bowl on social media. I'll also put you on to some game real quick. Whether you're a mayo lover or not, putting a layer of mayo on your grilled cheese bread right before you put it in the pan takes the sandwich to the next level, I promise you. And as anyone from the South will tell you, it's Dukes or nothing when it comes to mayo. If you want a one-stop shop for those games as well as many others, college sports fans now have access to an app called the Varsity Network. The Varsity Network conveniently brings together free live game day broadcasts for hundreds of schools during various sports seasons. It also features original content and national college programming such as College Football Blitz and the new College Football Saturday Night with Mike Golick and Kate Scott. Fans can download the app on iPhone or Android for instant access to free game day audio streams. You can also receive push notifications to remind you of games starting or upcoming audio broadcasts. We thank Home Field, the Charlotte Sports Council, and the Varsity for supporting SZD.
All right, I'm convinced. I'm going to call you One Take Johnson for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'll call that. Richard, great job with commerce. Speaking of, this podcast is just about 1 year old this month. And we have what I think is exciting news, really good news for us, that we are partnering this football season with Prize Picks, which is a daily fantasy site and app that we've been playing around with for a few weeks now. They are based out of Atlanta, Georgia. You might have seen them through a partnership they have with the Falcons or the Braves.
Woo!
We Split Zone Duo, a similarly large and recognizable sports brand as those two Atlanta franchises,
Facts.
are working with Prize Picks this season. We're really excited about it. You've probably heard us on the show before talk about, like, hey, if you ever want to partner up, call us. We're open for business. Obviously, we've been with Home Field for a long time, and we've had some others come in throughout the course of the last year. But we're really glad we got linked up with these folks at Prize Picks. It's an important part of growing podcast business, quite literally for us. And so thanks to them for making it happen. Also, thanks to all of you for listening enough to make this a worthwhile place to advertise. I have never felt better that SCD is going to be a long-haul operation, and I think I could speak for the group on that. I think we all feel pretty great about it at the moment. Also, our point person at Prize Picks is a nice guy named Jordan who went to Maryland around the time I did and is somehow an optimistic post-grad Maryland football fan, which is like spotting an exotic turtle species somewhere in the wild where you didn't know turtles could survive. What?
Just could you explain Prize Picks, please?
Yes, I will explain Prize Picks. Thank you. The app, the website. It works on your phone, works on your computer, your iPad, what have you. The easiest way that I've ever encountered to play daily fantasy sports. I've been doing this for a little bit, testing it out because we would prefer not to advertise for products that do not work and that we don't like, so we wouldn't do that here. The way that it works is you pick 2 to 5 players and sort of an over-under on their individual stat line. And you can make picks, so it's like if you get both of them right or you get all 3 right, then you get a multiplied payout. Or you can pick, you only have to get 1 right, but it has, so it kind of protects your risk, but it has a lower payout. You get to kind of choose your own adventure. You can do things like mix and match different picks from different sports. So if you wanted to pick a Patrick Mahomes passing yards over and a Shohei Ohtani hits over, you could do that, or any number of college football mixes and matches. It's easy app to use. It's really straightforward, and it's just you against a projection, which I think is fun. I think that it's a much less convoluted way to play daily fantasy sports than you might find in other places. Also, the app is just like really, really smooth. Really, really easy. I poked around with it. Works well. It is available in the majority of U.S. states right now, and there could be more on the way. It's also available in Canada, but right now it's in every American state except Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Idaho, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, and Washington. Easier to count the states that it's not in than the ones that it is in, though they're still growing more.
In post, I want to do that thing where you like speed it up like a million times, and It sounds like he's like reading the disclaimer. I like that.
Yes, we do need to decide. We do need to make this sound as radio as possible. If it's not in your state yet, stay tuned. Maybe it will be soon. And just thank you anyway for listening to our show. We have a promo code. It is SZD. You have probably seen us tweet it, and if you haven't, when you sign up for Prize Picks, you can just put that in, and you'll get a deposit match up to $100 to play around with in the app. If you use that code, we look good. We look like we're good partners for people to advertise with to sponsor this show. We like to be candid about how our podcast business works. We don't get commissions or anything like that, but we are being paid by Prize Picks this year. We think it's going to be a great partnership. And the way that we show that people are interested in our work and that we are good partners for advertising is if you sign up and you use the promo code SCD. So we would love for you to do that if you're interested. Also, it's a fit because we like to pick college football things. Richard, Steven, week 1 is upon us. Should we, in fact, pick some players, over-unders, use these as entry points to talk about college football games that are being played this week?
I'm excited to learn and then to hastily make a decision based off of either agreeing with you guys or just being a contrarian.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, I think that's an extremely wise idea. We put this one to the public, the first of a couple that we'll do this week. Obviously, UCF and Boise State are playing each other. Keep your eyes, by the way, on the sidelines during that game for a friend of the program,
man,
Harry Lyles Jr. Well, one of the two best
yeah, that's right. He's doing that one.
baby.
Yeah.
Yep. Harry Lyles Jr. will be on the sidelines for ESPN that week, and perhaps on future Thursday night games this year for ESPN. So I would be watching just for that, even if it was the worst game of all time. But it turns out it's not. It turns out it's actually a pretty good one between UCF and Boise State. Dylan Gabriel's over-under for this game, 327.5 passing yards as a pick'em. So we put this one to the public. We tweeted this one out, and the public overwhelmingly thinks that the under is the way to go here. 77% thinking that Dylan Gabriel will not get to 327.5 passing yards. It sounds like a high number, but you have to remember that he has been a bucket getter for his entire college career. Mm-hmm. However, Richard, you think this is going under?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If I'm Gus, how do I want to play this in the first game of my tenure, right? You'd imagine that they probably want to not give Boise a million trillion possessions and not, I don't know how Boise's going to come out and play this under Andy Avalos, but, you expect Boise to try to, at least in some way, shape, or form, run it down UCF's throat.
Yep.
And they might want to slow the game down. So, maybe you don't want to give Boise that many possessions because, remember, hurry up incompletions are just really fast 3-and-outs. So I'm going under here.
I'm going under as well. I do think it's very strange, and it doesn't happen that often, where we're seeing a team transition away from their comfort being a lot of deep ball passing to, we'll call Gus just a run game for the sake of simplicity here. I just think Boise's going to be the mitigating factor here. I think Boise on the road acquits themselves very nicely. I don't think you're going to see a ton of change just because there's a new head coach. I think it's going to be more about opportunities than anything else.
I just think of the stylistic difference between Josh Heupel, who was the coach of this team, and Gus, who is now. And with Heupel, the offense is really the simplest offense in college football. Richard, would you say that's fair? You basically sprint to the line, allowing nothing to elapse from the play clock.
Numbers on cards, right?
And then just throw the ball down the outside of the field as far as you can and hope that it works. And
pretty much.
Pretty often did work. That's not how Gus rolls. And so I don't think that you're going to see kind of that lightning scoring that UCF was occasionally able to put together under Heupel. I'm going under as well. Dylan, it's nothing against you. I am curious to see how that fit between like the deep ball throwing quarterback and a coach who is not known for go routes will work out. He's a talented quarterback. It's a talented coach. I think it should work out, but I am curious to see what it looks like. Also a weeknighter. Minnesota is playing Ohio State. Tanner Morgan at Prize Picks is over under 0.5 interceptions, as in a single interception hits the over. Mm-hmm. This was an easy one for me. I went over because it's Minnesota and it's Ohio State. And Haskell Garrett, I realized, the defensive tackle for Ohio State, Haskell Garrett, is still on the team, that he was not in NFL draft pick.
He didn't go.
I totally missed that, and I hope he really enjoys being a college student because this is beneath him, competitively speaking. And I think that Minnesota's quarterback, Tanner Morgan, who we are talking about here, is going to have a pocket that sort of collapses in on itself like a star at the end of its life cycle. And I think it's going to lead to turnovers on the part of the Ohio State defense. So I'm going over. And I think that also Ohio State's going to make light work of this game.
I'm going against my better judgment here and really popping this on gut and going to go under. Don't feel good about it.
Wow.
Probably should take the over. Going to take the under. Obviously, the ball can bounce, but Ohio State's corners leave quite a bit to be desired. They did so all last season. I understand Minnesota may be at times coming very, very far behind in this game and needing to throw the ball. But I don't know. Sometimes you go on vibes.
Yeah, my vibe is a big neon sign that says week 1. And it's another neon sign about 5 miles down the road that says it's Ohio State. So to me, this was the easiest bit. Yeah, by far. I'm definitely going over. It really has nothing to do with Tanner Morgan. It has to do with, again, just to repeat, it's week 1, and it's the most talented team in your conference.
Yep. And I don't think that Ohio State needs to have great cornerbacks to get interceptions in this game.
I
think
the ball bounces.
When the interception occurs, I think it will be more the result of pass rush influencing bad decisions than it will be outstanding corner play, such as throwing into a shitty zone.
Yes, it could be a fair catch for a safety, for all we know. Also, last one of the week here, Kyron Williams, the outstanding running back at Notre Dame, over under 92.5 rush yards. I put this one on
I
here.
think they're going to smack them and just sit on the ring and sit on the game.
I put this one in here because I'm interested in talking about what Notre Dame is going to look like in 2021. We think they're going to be worse. I think it's kind of inevitably a step back. They're not going undefeated again and making the playoff, or undefeated until the ACC championship, because they're not in the ACC anymore. Can't be in that game. The more you know. But typically when a team loses 4 starters on the offensive line to the NFL, they have big problems. And I think that Notre Dame, and this is a credit to Brian Kelly's recruiting, might not have big problems. They have a transfer from Marshall, Kane Madden, who's going to play right guard for them, who smart people say it was one of the best players who transferred in the entire cycle heading into this year. They've got a top 60 recruit from a couple years ago playing left tackle. They have their center back. And they might just Wisconsin this thing with a Wisconsin quarterback. It could just be that. And so I think Kyron Williams is going to get force-fed in this game.
I'm kind of jumping on Alex's logic here only because I do love the idea that Jack Cohn, I love the idea of the magical ability of a former Wisconsin quarterback that anywhere he goes, they just run the ball. That's his superpower is that he doesn't do anything. He just influences you to make another decision. No, I think it's obvious, not just because of Notre Dame's personnel, but I think Florida State is they kind of share this trait with Miami. You keep building out of transfers, you keep building out of problems, and you keep going with short-term solutions. So, I don't know this defense, to be honest. I don't know you. And this is just not the kind of Florida State defense that inspires a lot of fear.
They did do what seemed like a respectable job, but we don't know yet, rebuilding the defense via transfer. So, Marvin Wilson and Josh Kando, who are 5 stars on that defensive line, neither of them was necessarily what they were hoped to be when they got there, but they were still pretty talented, important players for Florida State's front. Florida State has basically tried to replace them by importing an SEC defensive line.
That's just, but the phrase
Georgia and South Carolina transfers.
I'm dubious of the phrase rebuilding via transfer in any context whatsoever, but especially when you're applying it against this situation being Notre Dame's ability to mash on you for just 92 yards. That just inspires no confidence.
So we are interested in Kyron Williams running for a lot of yards in this game. Fair enough. We're excited about the season. Thank you all. Also, Prize Picks, thanks for sponsoring the show. We are looking forward to the next couple months of seeing how this unfolds.
I feel very good about this Tanner Morgan thing. I think I outsmarted Mr. Schematics on this show by going.
Yeah, I think I may have outsmarted. I may have outsmarted myself on that one.
I think you might regret that. We will do.
Tune in for my scheme segment next week called Blitz.
Jesus Christ.
Richard has a quick bit of podcast business again, and then we will get back to some things for week 1. Gents, tasting menu. Week 1 is upon us. Thursday night, Bowling Green and Tennessee are playing. Richard, we both thought that you were going there earlier. I am a little curious about this one on Thursday night. It's at 7 p.m. God's time. That's Central Time on SEC Network. I will tell you why I'm curious about it. Do you not want to know why I'm curious about it, Richard?
I'm curious about it. I'm curious about it because you can find it on your television dials on the SEC Network. In my opinion, one of the best networks on cable.
That's right. I'm curious about it because, not only am I a bit of a rubbernecker from time to time, and Bowling Green is very bad, and Tennessee is also probably very bad in a different way, but we might finally get a quantitative answer to how much a defense improves right off the hop when Brian Van Gorder goes from being your defensive coordinator to no longer being on staff. Bowling Green had one of the worst defenses I've ever seen last year. Could not stop MAC teams. Could not stop Akron. If they can keep Tennessee under 42 points, then that will be the worst look yet for the Bowling Green Falcons and Notre Dame's and many other teams' erstwhile defensive coordinator. I'm just curious about it from that perspective. And I have always known that on this podcast, if there's one way to appeal to a wide cross-section of fans, other than making fun of Bobby Petrino, it's making fun of Brian Van Gorder. So here we are, playing the hits and riling up the audience.
Gentlemen, this is actually an anxiety bowl.
Oh.
What?
I'm not here to tamper with the run of show, just to bring you guys behind the curtain. We let Alex kind of set the table for these big shows in the middle of the week. Here's why this is an anxiety. But Tennessee, I don't even have to explain that nonsense. In fact, it's an anxiety bowl for Tennessee if they win by anything less than 30. It's an anxiety bowl because this has been a terrible decision by Bowling Green to bring in a coach who was not really qualified for this role. Who I granted
who's that coach, Stephen? Who's that coach?
That would be Scott. That would be Scott LOL Loeffler. When you spell his name, you can find the LOL in there.
Tim Tebow's quarterback whisperer, Scott Loeffler.
Yeah. If you want your quarterback to immediately catch gangrene, this is a bad decision that Bowling Green made because they made a bad decision on a previous coach. And look, I love the bit, and I'm committed to the BVG bit because Lord knows I hate Brian Van Gorder for two different rooting reasons. If they just get evaporated, they're not going to see any mercy in Mac play. This could be one of the worst teams in college football this year. So, I mean, it's definitely somebody that I think if this is a 40-plus win with really no offensive identity whatsoever for Bowling Green against a not good Tennessee defense, then, yeah, we do have to start talking about a hot seat in the MAC after week 1, even though it is a money game. Seriously.
I would rather not do that ever.
I don't know. Friday, Richard, Virginia Tech and UNC, you are involved in this game?
Well, I'm not involved yet. I am thinking about becoming involved with this. Virginia Tech is a 5.5 point underdog. Not involved yet, but I'm considering it. I think there's a notion that I hate North Carolina on this podcast. I don't. I promise that I don't. But I am curious about this. Again, not involved yet, considering becoming involved. I'm involved in some other games, of course, moving forward as we get to those.
I want to believe, Alex. I want to believe.
In what? In whom?
In a North Carolina that somehow combines those two disparate coordinator philosophies and actually gives Clemson a run for its money and just makes the ACC more interesting. These are highly volatile, highly talented elements coming together. And then also, I'm kind of ready to put a bullet in the Virginia Tech era that we're living through as someone who kind of has the feels for that program because I like everything that happened in the early 90s. It's just scary to commit to UNC in a situation like this on the road in Blacksburg. Although the phrase "on the road in Blacksburg" has definitely lost a lot of its fucking allure.
Yeah. The thing that I'm wondering about, man, I love chaos. How many times have we talked about Justin Fuente's inexorable march towards a firing here? Man, that would sure mess some things up. That would really suck for Virginia Tech if they went and won this game.
It would derail a lot of our prognosticated sort of like chain effects in terms of early season stuff and movement. But look,
not necessarily because the year they beat Ohio State, what they do the rest of the year? Yeah, whatever.
Well, they didn't have Justin Fuente the year they beat Ohio State.
That's fair. By the way, this is 5 p.m. God's time per LSUfootball.net. We back.
Yep. As longtime listeners will know, the tasting menu goes off of Central Time.
Damn right it does. I don't have a lot of tradition. Look, we don't have to do a lot of things in this family, but we are not getting away from God's time zone. I don't make y'all get dressed on Sundays. I don't make y'all go to the church. Richard knows this bit. Trust me, I'm sure he's heard it too. I don't make y'all go on Sundays, but you in this house, we are not changing off Central Time.
Okay, fair enough. I'm willing to concede on that point.
Salute to the troops, Navy and Marshall.
Navy and Marshall.
Can someone explain this line to me?
You're involved there?
I'm involved there. That is correct. Marshall -3. And I don't really know why it's not more. The line might have moved since I saw it at 3, but I'm just not sure.
What am I missing here?
It's actually down. It's actually down to 2.5 right now.
Oh, it's down to 2.5
for Marshall. They're only 2.5, so I guess should have waited. But I don't get it. Sometimes I feel like people are just trying to prove how much they respect the troops. If Navy doesn't have a QB, we've seen what they are. Ken has a team that vacillates between absolutely awesome when you have Malcolm Perry or Keenan Reynolds, and very, very uninspired when you do not have a special quarterback.
And this is Saturday, by the way, 2:30 God's time.
This is Saturday, yeah.
Because the dirty little secret about this weekend, by the way, is we are spreading real thin this weekend.
It's not Thursday not Friday, a well-designed schedule.
Thursday and Friday are... I love the Festival of College Football. I will absolutely be on my duff for all of it. But Thursday and Friday are light.
You got nap windows.
Light.
You have available naps, multiple.
The thing that I'm curious about from the Marshall perspective is whether this is turnkey for Charles Huff. It seems like it, right? But I did mention that really good transfer. One of their best players left for Notre Dame. Maybe less so than it looked on the surface.
I'm terrified. I agree with you, and I'm terrified. Here's why, Alex. I'm going to steal young Richard's thunder. This could very well be a turnkey job because of the way that Marshall qualifies its players and the fact that they had talent when they made the change. This isn't a reclamation project by any stretch. This is a football program that understands how to win, tradition. They get it. They make it. They turned being in the southern ass end of West Virginia into an advantage. If Charles Huff wins quickly, Charles Huff will get mentioned for jobs. The rate of success is so poor for minority coaches that make that next step. Mm-hmm. You have to be judicious. And early success here at Marshall could put him in the crosshairs of a job that on paper, it's one of those you got to take it jobs that has no ending to it, right? We see this happen all the time, and there's no reason for him to play patsy on this. I guess what I'm saying, Alex, is it is a turnkey job, but, dude, stick around and win the CUSA for 2 or 3 years. How about that?
Seems doable.
Just pick the right next job, dude.
I hope that he gets that opportunity. Richard, at 3:30 Central, weird time for a game, Louisiana, they are Louisiana at the moment.
Yes, they are Louisiana. They may earn a semi-permanent Louisiana if they do what's necessary on Saturday.
They are visiting the Texas Longhorns. Hook 'em. You are contemplating involvement here. Am I correct?
No, sir. Not contemplating involvement. Brother, I've been pot committed since June as far as being involved on this one. I got involved at 13.5. Louisiana plus 13.5. Louisiana now is plus 8. Folks, you want to talk about closing line value? That is closing line value. So I am pot committed. I am very involved here. I have them at 13.5. Let's hope Texas doesn't win by 2 touchdowns or more. Texas debuting a new starting quarterback. Everybody's hot on. Bruce Feldman has a really good feature in The Athletic. I think he dropped yesterday about what Texas coaches are saying about that and people saying about that. The Sark era begins.
What are they saying about that?
I'm looking at Louisiana with hearts in the eyes and dollar signs in the eyes.
Wait. You swore me off this.
When?
The physicality of offensive line versus defensive line.
I did.
Play.
Yeah, didn't I?
You did it on this show.
I think I may have. I'm a hypocrite.
I
have a ticket.
Wow.
Get the transcripts, Candy.
I have a Louisiana ticket.
I'm hurt.
And have had
dude,
a Louisiana ticket for months. I'm a fraud.
You lied to me.
You could be, if this were like stock trading, the SEC could come after you for some sort of market manipulation.
Yeah.
That's tough, dude.
I'm a fraud. Yeah.
He doesn't mean that in any actionable way. Just want to make clear.
Of course not. Tap the sign.
Fair enough. Richard, run me through. You've got first. I guess I could actually. I understand why this could be an interesting game. Except it's probably on Pac-12 Network, so probably no one can see it. USC against a conference champion.
Yeah, I'm involved there. USC minus 14 over San Jose State. I'm just not really buying that San Jose State's going to do that again. I think USC is going to spank them at higher than 14. So I got that. Baylor minus 14 over Texas State. Texas State is awful. Texas State barely has any non-high school players in its last recruiting class. I think it's only one. Stephen Godfrey tells me it's only one. Podcasting is visual medium. And again, I have LSU. I'm involved there. LSU minus 3 over UCLA. I actually have it at minus 4 and minus 3. But minus 3 is going to be in the tweet because that's a lower number for them to cover. To the night window.
Real fast. Texas State and Baylor, if you want to see 2 weird experiments occurring, it's not going to be a good football game. I'm not saying you should watch it. I'm saying you should just sort of breeze by it. This transfer situation in Texas State, they could come out just looking like an absolute, just insane shit show, or maybe it's a perfect coalescing of mercs.
It could be. If you remember last year, they were a tough luck team. They could have won a number of games they didn't, including against SMU. they were really young. We've talked enough about Texas State and whether, like, I'm a little suspicious because it kind of smells like use transfers to get another job.
Yeah.
You've told me that that's not going to work at a place like Texas State, so that doesn't make sense. I get it, but it might coalesce well.
If he gets another job, it ain't going to be in the state of Texas because I think the
coaches don't like it.
THSAA is not particularly happy with this move. And then the other, just real fast, we hit pause with 2020 and we didn't create referendums, right, guys? We don't know if Colorado and Arkansas are actually that good. What the fuck is Baylor?
Well, we're waiting to
way
see.
better than 2 touchdowns over Texas.
I've said what I want to see from Baylor this year. I want to see Dave Aranda coach less like a defensive coordinator and stop punting from the 35-yard line.
The Larry Fedora situation did not work out at all. And I think if Utah suddenly becomes a formidable Pac-12 candidate to win the championship, I think his Baylor thing may not work. This may not be a good hire.
I got a quick Texas State question because we just talked about it for like 20 seconds. You mentioned that the Texas high school coaches are not happy with Jake Spavital because Texas State basically skipped high school recruiting for an entire class and got transfers instead, which means fewer scholarship offers out there for these high school coaches.
Yeah, for a kid to go to San Marcos instead of Minnesota.
Is this so? Transfers are significantly more in vogue across all of college football right now because they're more easily allowed to play right away and player empowerment and all of that. Do we think that sort of friction is that a franchisable model in other states, or is this just a Texas coaches think, hey, we're Texas high school football, how dare you disrespect us by building your college roster this way?
I think all of this, it's hard to pull it out of the context of it being Texas. Maybe the state of Florida, you might be able to make an argument here, or maybe Georgia, maybe California. Doing this in the state of Texas just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever because the caliber of transfer that you're going to bring in at Texas State combined with the circumstances you're presently in, it doesn't make any sense to me. Alex, I'll be honest, sometimes like you'll throw out something that's very critical of like an administration or just an establishment and I'll try and temper it a little bit. I think that you're not even going hard enough. This is such an obvious grab at getting the fuck out of there and leaving the program in any kind of shambles. It doesn't matter. Like, I just want to pause for a second. Imagine if Bobby Petrino, on his ascent through the college ranks, had the weaponized version of transfers available to him. He would have left even deeper, even more smoking craters behind. I don't get it at all.
Truly shudder to think.
It's hard to imagine. Yeah. I'll be curious to see if it works for him. And if not, then he can go and be the offensive coordinator for Cliff Kingsbury.
Here's the other thing.
If he doesn't get fired.
Here's the other thing. Jeff Traylor, who came from the high school ranks, is like the darling right now at UTSA. That doesn't. You've got the dichotomy at play there.
That is a great point. I assume that Jeff Traylor is utterly beloved by the high school Texas coaching ranks.
Texas Tech. Sorry. What?
Arizona BYU, 9:30 p.m. in Las Vegas. Alex, are you involved there, my friend?
So, no, I'm not involved, but I wanted it on the tasting menu anyway.
Interested but not involved.
It might have fit in the anxiety bowl thing that we were discussing because, look, let's talk about how this could go. It should go that BYU should crush them because even in a reduced state, BYU is starting from 100 stories up and Arizona is starting from a mine shaft somewhere. So there's a big height difference between where these teams are coming from. But nonetheless, so BYU is probably fine. Like they just vote of confidence. They just extended Satake like yesterday for 2 years.
Yes, yeah.
So he's not in any like significant trouble if he loses this game. But nonetheless, I think that would be an indicator that BYU is not only stepping back a lot, but is stepping back perhaps even more than we thought. Like, I think most people see them as, like, last year they were sort of a fringy, almost playoff contender for a while. This year, if they lose to Arizona, then it's like, oh, we are fighting for a bowl game. Like, it's not like we're dropping to 8-4. It's like we're dropping to 5-7 or 6-6. And there's a difference there. Or Jed Fish gets wiped out by BYU, and for some reason, there seems to have been a very small bit of media buzz around Jed Fish, like, very, very small. This is I don't think any of us really thinks it's going to work for him.
No.
And if they get grease
Don Brown is the defensive coordinator there, which means, buddy, they are going to play one way and one way only.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just like if they get utterly destroyed in this game, then, well, it's not a great way to start, especially because the last coach got fired for how, like, it was like I think that someone was getting fired anyway, but the embarrassing way in which they lost the Territorial Cup last year sort of paved the way for a very smooth exit for him. You would hate to see Jedd Fisch start by getting like whooped on. Like you don't want a 42-7 loss in this game, but that seems completely possible to me.
They're bad, and this was a job that was hard to sell to people. This is a Power 5 job that was really hard to sell to people. There's not a lot of economic advantage for the actual coach's salary or the salary pool. This is pre various Arizona State scandals. You're losing so much ground to your in-state rival, and then you look at the South as a whole. Jedd Fisch is probably a nice guy. I'm just trying to be honest. Like, this is not a good football team, and it probably won't be for a while.
I agree. Richard, close us out here. You've got one also at the 9:30 p.m. God's time slot, I believe.
Yes, I do. Nevada and Cal. I will be staying up for this one.
Okay.
Bringing back a segment from the spiritual successor of this podcast, Minority Coach of the Week in an interesting schematic spot. Now, Minority Coach of the Week is not an achievement award. It doesn't even mean that the coach or his unit or his team are even going to play well. It is just taking a look and saying, well, that's an interesting schematic spot. Trey Watson, DB coach at Cal, against Nevada and what Nevada's quarterback Carson Strong can do through the air. Me and friend of the show Seth Galina talked about Carson Strong on a recent Patreon podcast, patreon.com/SZD.
Slash,
if you'd like
not backslash.
to check that out. Carson Strong may be an undercover draft darling, depending on how well Nevada plays this season. Nevada's offense is coordinated by Matt Mumme, who's Hal Mumme's son. Hal Mumme literally invented the air grade. I know it's not sexy, but in 2019, Nevada's offensive S&P 110-ish in the country. Last year, 71st. They have made strides in that area, and a lot of people believe pretty strongly that Carson Strong, no pun intended, is a really, really good quarterback. Cal's defense, we know it's salty. We know they can get after it. They had a very, very weird 2020 season, even by Pac-12 standards. They only played 4 games. But Justin Wilcox obviously is a name to know as a head coach if he can get Cal back on the track that they were on to be this sort of schematic trip up. Yes, offense. I know. But former DB's coach at Cal, Gerald Alexander, is now with the Dolphins and now helping the Dolphins become, honestly, one of the saltiest defenses in the league by building a defense more or less from back to front by spending a lot of money on corners. They even just extended Xavier Howard. Gerald Alexander was a former, I think, Minority Coach of the Week in an interesting schematic spot when he was the DB coach at Cal. So let's look at and let's see what Cal does in pass defense against Nevada late Saturday night.
What if you could combine Lane Kiffin's offense and Justin Wilcox's defense into one single program? You would have like Mecha Gundam Zach Morris, square-jawed American like football coach. That would be like the most desirable fucking coach in the world. Justin Wilcox is losing out on consideration for jobs he would probably be good at because his offense is ass. They hired Bill Musgrave from the NFL. I don't understand why. Get an offense, dummies.
Yeah, I don't know. This question, or not this question, but this bit about Matt Mumme, in part, reminded me of a question that we were asked recently. This is not in the show run, but I'm including it because I've been wondering about it myself. Jared VDH on our Patreon pointed out that Mike Leach and Hal Mumme, Matt's dad, have previously credited Lavelle Edwards at BYU quite a bit for being the origin of the air raid. But when you talk about the actual like progenitors of the air raid, people only talk about Leach and Mumme.
Right.
Do we know why this is? And I thought about it. I don't know that I remember it certainly from The Perfect Pass, which is a good book that Hal Mumme instructed me to read, and I did. But isn't it because the air raid was like a branding thing that at Iowa Wesleyan that Leach and Mumme just started calling it? So it wasn't called the air raid when Lavelle Edwards did it, even though he was running Y cross all the time. And basically Leach and Mumme stole his IP and put a new name on it.
Yeah, I mean, these schematic evolutions that become brand names are not entirely dissimilar from like musical movements that like happen in pop music, where, you know, who invented a particular kind of rap, or who invented ska, or who, you know, like what is the actual origin of punk? Like the concepts behind air raid, Mike Leach wrote in his own book, like none of it was invented. None of it was conceived by Mummy or Leach. It's the combination of things. Richard, you're probably more qualified to speak on that.
And it's also calling the same damn play the whole game.
You know what's funny? You're right, and that kind of leads me to say that air raid was so much more. God, I hate to say this. It was a little bit of an attitude and a demeanor and a style of play calling as it was what was in the book. Because as Leach will tell you, like, he can teach you the book without the book. Like, he could just tell you what to do.
Yeah, there's not that many different things you have to do.
Nope. And
honestly,
then you repeat, which is why I think Mississippi State actually might be good this year.
We will see. A question that I did want to get to this week pertained to a good event last week, and it'll be the only question, I think, before we get out of here, is from a subscriber to our Patreon, Lorraine M. Thank you to everyone who subscribes. We've plugged it enough. We really appreciate it. It's another reason that we're excited about this show. Lorraine asks, or points out, that the MEAC SWAC Challenge, which was last Saturday, was, in my opinion, awesome. The presentation and production of the game on ESPN was equivalent to the usual primetime quality. What would it take for networks to view HBCU games as viable content to have the same production values we saw in that game, which was between Alcorn and North Carolina Central? It was a win for Central 23-14. I saw just little bits and pieces of that game because I was trying to get away from football the weekend before we are inundated with it for a very long time. But yeah, it got great reviews. Richard, any thoughts? I have a few, and Godfrey, I'm curious for you as well, on what has to happen to get more shine and production value on HBCU football games.
RJ, you want to go first?
Yeah. So first of all, this was the I think second highest rated HBCU game like ever. It was on Saturday night. So I'm kind of going to speak almost sort of out of both sides of my mouth here, because the history of HBCU football is what we understand it to be. College Game Day actually did a really cool segment on the history of like an HBCU basically all-star team. Everybody from Deacon Jones to Jerry Rice himself, Walter Payton, etc., Steve McNair, of course, et cetera, et cetera. It was really a really cool HBCU blowout day in week 0. I think like a week 0 is a really cool place to put something like this, because you can give it the shine that it may not otherwise have on an otherwise crowded slate. Remember, HBCU teams are still FCS teams.
Yep.
Like they're not going to take up the mind share that and I think that it's almost like, it's not to say we shouldn't give them more attention, but in a sense, to me, it's always like, why are you trying to make and this is a broader this is sort of a broader notion about the nationalization of the sport in general. Why are you trying to make them this sort of national brand inflated to the point that they are not? Which is not to say that they should be regarded as just this niche part of college football. So where is the balance there? I enjoyed the broadcast, what part I did. I watched most of the first half. I love Mark Jones on television. Mark Jones called it for ESPN. Mark Jones is just like unapologetically black when he covers an insanely white sport. I think it's hilarious.
Is he the one that gets all salty on Twitter?
He's the one
one of the play-by-play guys.
The Pac-12 and Mark Jones have had beefs over the years, which makes me respect him even more.
One of those. I
do
one
not
of those play-by-play
follow him
guys
on
like gets real salty on social.
I do not follow him on Twitter, but I enjoy Mark Jones. RG3 was also one of the two color guys, Jay Walker, who is knows HBCU football in and out, and does HBCU football games for ESPN, was the other. RG3, not shockingly, but pretty good on TV. You're going to see a lot of RG3 on TV this season.
I'm not shocked by that.
Game. So, yeah, I didn't mean to say shocking. I actually can kind of see it. So it's interesting, and it's an interesting concept. We know that the Celebration Bowl is its own big deal at the end of the season because it sort of has that same spot. You give it a spot. You elevate it. I don't know if it becomes a thing where you're having a bunch of MEAC and SWAC games on Thursday nights or on Friday nights or whatever it is, or if they sort of do a MACtion Tuesday, Wednesday thing. I don't know what it is that you can sort of carve them out their own niche in the sport.
I think in general, like, networks are encouraged to give things a platform and a glossier treatment if they do one of two things. The first is get big ratings, which most teams can't do. There's like 20 teams or something like that can do that in college football. And the other is to be something, be a brand, be an event that media companies just want to be associated with. And I think that's where this SWAC challenge with the MEAC last week fits. Like, it was a beautiful celebration of football and of black college football specifically. You had bands there. You had, obviously ESPN made an entire weekend of it with, a big party around game day, and Migos were there, and, you're able to make it into a big spectacle.
Migos didn't know who was playing.
They definitely did not know.
They had no idea.
Perhaps not. But, like, it is black college football is something that's really worth celebrating, and it has a deep, and not only a deep history, but like a lot of buoyancy and excitement around it. Like, there is more happening adjacent to the actual game at a lot of HBCU games than there are at like some random MAC game. And I think as a general rule, that's true. And like, it's a cool thing for ESPN, I think, to be associated with. So make as many things as you can like that. I think that that's one of the reasons why the Celebration Bowl kind of pops and why these conferences are interested in having an event like that, rather than just another FCS playoff game that only the real diehards watch, and that's probably on ESPN Plus or something. So keep making an event. You've got something to show off. And I guess everyone except a few teams is kind of fighting for oxygen here in a college football media landscape, but celebrate what's worth celebrating, which is, I think, a lot about HBCU football.
If they're fine with novelty moments, like week 0, Celebration Bowl, maybe a couple things scattered in between, then don't change. But otherwise, I think they need to adopt a wholesale reevaluation of how they are being portrayed and where they can go to receive a more holistic amount of coverage. And it's probably not going to be on the worldwide leader, but just because of sheer math and time and volume and inventory. But
where's the money come absent the worldwide leader?
That's the problem in college football in general, is that everybody from like the MAC feels hemmed in by them. Conference USA goes outside of it. They can't find any money. They're on the verge of, barely being a conference. The problem is that we're dealing with a broadcast monopoly in terms of the inventory. It creates problems both for viewers. It creates problems for media. It also creates access problems for media. And it also creates problems on the actual, conferences. If you only have one person in the market that's willing to buy your goods, that's a pretty terrible market. This is a problem that a lot of other conferences are facing, but specifically for the SWAC and the MEAC to start branding themselves more nationally, receiving more acclaim, I can give you all the fundamental building blocks for, you need to establish narrative, stories, go out and report on these teams. Great. So what ESPN and Fox will do is they assign production units to cover games, and so you basically have the same play-by-play and color analyst and sideline reporter and producers work together all year, and they go out and they strive to find stories to establish narratives so that the casual viewer can engage in a game that they may not necessarily be a fan of either team. That's the kind of attention and production level that you're not going to give to SWAC and MEAC games at ESPN, even at their size. This is the problem. It's money and time. And when you go to the most crowded network, it's this is an issue absent, again, HBCUs. I think HBCUs specifically can seek out an alternative method, TBD, honestly, because we have to look at the new media landscape. You're going to have to zig where people are zagging. This is a message I give, again, not just to HBCUs, but especially to HBCUs. You have to want to do it, and there has to be an organized, concerted effort to do so. The thing I continue to fail to understand is why so many of these school presidents and conference commissioners just resign themselves to taking pennies on the dollar from the biggest network out there to be marginalized behind the Plus app. I don't get it.
And you're talking about more than, you're talking about the MAC, you're talking about...
literally everyone outside of the Power 5 all the way down. I think counter programming or at least looking at another venue or option. The problem is this. I, just to let you guys in on a secret, really frustrated and really don't like the way CBS Sports Network treats their inventory, which is Conference USA, Army, Mountain West. I don't know all of the top of my head. You got to make it special. You got to make somebody just either flipping by or stopping, just for some bizarre interest. You got to keep them there. You can't just do the football game.
Where it gets tough is that obviously there's a dearth of media bidders for these things right now. And
Yeah.
the alternative is, well, maybe NBC would want it. And if NBC wanted it, where would they put it? They'd put it on Peacock. And where would Fox put it? Well, I mean,
Gents,
maybe best not to find out.
It's time for Split
But-
Zone to start getting into the rights business.
Into the rights game. Well,
Yep.
hey, we need just a few more sponsors, and I think we'll finally be there.
Just 1 or 2 more patrons.
Also, exactly. Speaking of, by the way, HBCU football, in the FCS upset draft that we did a few weeks ago, North Carolina A&T over Duke is among the most popular picks. A lot of people hitching their wagon to the Aggies in that game. Thank you if you signed up.
RJ, what's our
you.
message for David Cutcliffe?
It's time, brother.
It's time.
It's time. NC A&T could perform a public service if they do well enough in that game. Gents, tell the people where they can find you.
Sorry,
Oh, baby.
I had to take a breath. Week
Yeah,
one. Dude, we are out of shape. Straight up.
buddy.
We're out of shape.
90 minutes strong. I am. Whew.
You go.
Monday nights. Holy shit. Monday nights. SEC Network, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central. I am also in the website pages of Sports Illustrated, my new full-time writing job, and of course here with you every Wednesday with Alex every Sunday as well, doing the hurry up.
At 38 Godfrey on Instagram and Twitter. Secret Base. Falcons doc. I am my part's coming up. I'm very excited. I also have some college football content coming out with them. I have a couple things I'll announce next week. Also, check out the Ibble app. Depending on when you hear this, I may be hosting an event on there again. Because when y'all put yourselves on video to ask painful questions about your sports teams, y'all really emotionally let it out. I think it's good therapy.
Richard and I will see you on Sunday on this podcast feed, and Godfrey will be on the Patreon feed, I believe, as I'm planning now, multiple times between now and then. Thank you all for your support of the show. We are very excited for the college football season. We'll talk to you extremely soon.
Happy week 1, everybody.